There's a number of things that we're going to be talking about today. And I do want to start off, though, with talking about Israel, because really Israel is what makes everything else of consequence. Without Israel being on the scene and being in the picture and literally coming back into statehood in 1948, really nothing else that we see might be significant in our own personal lives, but wouldn't be significant from a biblical prophetic perspective. And so I'd love to just kind of pick your brain here for a little bit first, before we get into these other things, on Israel, what you're seeing and what you're making of the latest developments.
Well, there's no doubt that anything that we see happen in the land of Israel is significant in the sense that it is contributing to the final scenario, which for the most part, most prophecy teachers, a lot of variations, no doubt, but all of us recognize a certain level of Psalm 83 or even Ezekiel 38 for sure. And so it's interesting that this latest development, it's actually kind of surprising in many ways. Israel, for lack of a better term, they're just kicking butt. I mean, they're kicking butt in the land with the latest thing with really neutralizing Hezbollah for the most part, certainly with the assassinations of the top leadership. They're still making progress in Gaza against Hamas, and there is a lot of Hamas as well in Lebanon. So they are just now going in with their ground forces into Lebanon, and it's tough. It's not going to be easy. No. There's already been several casualties for the Israeli army, but they know what they got to do. Just today, earlier, it's been reported that for the first time, that Israel just today attacked a shipment that was coming from Iran that was landing at the Russian airbase in Syria. Now that's a big step up, because Israel knows that Russia is a formidable army for sure, and military, and they've done a good job of trying to avoid provoking or even antagonizing Russia at all, just kind of staying clear. But they know that they cannot not do it. They have to come in, and so I find it fascinating too that Israel, their sophisticated, F-35s and other things, they have their own versions of the F-35s that we sold them, but able to avoid the S-400, S-500, anti-airplane, aircraft, basically weaponry that Russia has. Right. For them to be able to do it is pretty amazing. So all that being said, when you look at the overall portrait, this is all contributing to the Iran, Turkey, Erdogan, and the Russian alliance, which Erdogan has been squawking a lot about having them move beyond out of Palestine. We saw what the United Nations did recently, telling Israel that they had to, within 1 year, they had to be out of Judea and Samaria. So all of these things come to play, and I'll just say this. It's in Ezekiel 37, after God brings back Israel, the vision of the dry bones. It says quite clear there that they will develop into an exceedingly great army. And if we look at Israel today and what they've been able to accomplish, and them doing what they should have done a while ago, even after being hamstrung by the current administration, they are an exceedingly great army, and they're poised to fulfill what we know in Ezekiel 38 for sure.
Yeah, they certainly are. There's no doubt about it. And Russia is definitely paying attention to all of this that's going on. And of course, we all know the scripture dealing with the burden of Damascus, an event that is yet to take place. And we talk about all of these things. Russia, in fact, I think we were talking for a few minutes before we actually went on air, and Russia is actually saying to Israel, they're calling on Israel to withdraw troops from Lebanon as well. They're saying, look, you got to get out of there. We don't want you in there. This does not fit Russian interests whatsoever. And then we got this as well. When you're talking about Erdogan from Turkey, Erdogan threatens war between Israel and Turkey. So, I mean, this whole thing is really continuing to broaden more and more. At some point, Ezekiel 38 is going to take place. But really, what we're seeing right now, what I find very interesting in these days that we're living in, I like to say all the time that we are living right now in biblical times, because we are seeing things really come to fruition, and especially the stage being set for so many of these things, for the burden of Damascus that we read about in the Word, and the inner ring around Israel, the further out, the outer ring, speaking about Ezekiel 38. It's just absolutely incredible with all of this. I mean, what would you say? I mean, do you think that the things that are taking place right now, even though this currently is not Ezekiel 38 taking place, but what are your thoughts on where everything is at today and getting to what we read in the scriptures from all of these different areas, what is going to happen?
Yeah, we know if we move backwards, in that sense, what we see in Ezekiel 38 is Israel being alone, and they're not alone today. I mean, there's currently 35 plus ships, 35 to 50 ships that are surrounding the Middle East by the United States, who are there in order to help deter an Iranian response of a greater thing that they just even did the other day. So, but Ezekiel 38 there, you have Israel being isolated. You have people in the passage making a protest, Sheba and Dedan asking, have you come to bring spoil or to take spoil? And so we're not there yet. We're not there at the point of seeing Israel be 100% isolated. We know that the United Nations, as I mentioned earlier, condemns Israel more than any other nation. And so you do have a worldwide opposition to Israel. Just simply them defending themselves causes, again, such a double standard, causes reactions. But so if we look in the sense of time frame, I wonder about the current election cycle, as an example, just as it relates to Israel specifically. The current administration, I think their hands are tied right now because they're playing politics. They need the Jewish vote, and so they're not going to hamstring or try to hamstring Israel too much, at least overtly. After the election, if Kamala gets voted in, they're going to have no reason at that moment to have any restraint at seeking to try to influence Israel into a two-state solution, and also to withhold weaponry, which they've already done in some ways, and then had to recant a little bit because of the election cycle. So that's going to determine a lot of what happens. But what we know is, this is what we know. Come Ezekiel 38, there will be nobody there to help Israel. That's what we know. So how we get from here to there as it relates to the geopolitics, and that determines a lot with how long it is away, as well as the next election cycle for sure.
Right. Totally agree. Why do you think that currently the U.S. is somewhat, and I do say somewhat, supporting Israel from a defensive standpoint, but every time Israel talks about making offensive moves, the U.S. backs off? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think again that there's politics involved here. The United States, the current administration has to sound like they are really pro-Israel, when in reality, Israel knows this. Israel knows that they are in this political game right now because of the election cycle. Because if you go back a year ago, again, there was even some reactions within the Congress about, hey, we have an agreement with Israel. We have obligations to them. Many of the Republicans were threatening certain things to the Biden administration, who were simply not fulfilling what was already voted on and approved by previous administrations, or even going, all the way back to the Egypt in 1979, the agreement that we had with Egypt, certain requirements for aid. So the fact that the Biden administration currently would be willing to stop those, they don't have the power to do that. These were already done. It's part of the agreements. So I think Right now, they don't want, in many ways, again for whatever reason, they don't want an expansion of a war with a full blown war with Iran in the region. I think that that's true too. So they're going over there just plain deterrent, because Iran knows, man. And honestly, if Iran knows that if the United States and all their aircraft carriers, if they were not there, I think Iran would be far more willing, or would have been willing to do something. But now, if we look at their trifecta of Iran, Hezbollah, and Hamas, and Israel has taken out two of them, or at least neutralized them to a great degree. And Iran doesn't care about Hezbollah really, except as a sacrificial proxy.
Right, right. Yeah, great. That's great. All right, so let's talk about this for just a moment. So I saw this on Breitbart. Israel bans the UN chief, Gutierrez, from entering the country after failing to condemn Iran. It amazes me how there are those that want to condemn Israel, whether it be just blatantly or in a softer kind of tone. What are your thoughts on that right there and everything that's come out in regards to the UN with even the attack that took place on October 7th?
Yeah, to me, if people want to understand our world, I think we know Scripture is the answer. It comes back to Romans 12, that we're not to be conformed to this world. Okay, we know that, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, of the Word, right? So one of the greatest passages ever is in two of them is in related to this. 1 John 5:19. The whole world lies under the power or the sway of the wicked one, right? So if you want to know who controls the UN, okay, it's the wicked one. Okay, 1 John 4 says very clearly as well that when the world speaks, the world listens to itself. And so the UN is not a godly agency by any means. And so I would say this: if you want to understand where Satan is or what Satan's position is, simply look at the doctrines of the United Nations. It's the world doctrines. Satan controls the world. That's in the Bible. So if you want to understand what God thinks, usually do the opposite of what they say. So when they're condemning Israel, as they've condemned Israel more than any other nation, just ridiculous. This latest thing with with what Israel did, it's extremely fair. You know what? You aren't worthy. You are not worthy of even having an opportunity to step into the land of Israel. So we know what? We're going to bar you. I appreciate Israel, especially Netanyahu speaking recently. He just speaks the truth as it relates to these issues. And there's so much hypocrisy in all of this that when you speak the truth, it's amazing that it's odd to hear just straight out candid fact.
Right.
And when he was speaking just recently, last week, you had all these people walking out, and they stayed in there, of course, as standard to make a point. They stayed in there, waited, and then they walked out. And he just blasted them with facts. And that's what's fallen in the street anymore is truth. So the fact that Israel would bar the UN Secretary General is honestly fair game.